You still up? Hurry up and go to sleep before the evil witch gets you. I might let her. Depends on how fast you can shut your eyes and drift to sleep. Well, aren't you just fearless? Fine, I'll read you a story. A story of someone equally fearless. Belle Starr's horse race. Belle Starr was second only to Jesse James as an infamous Midwest personality. Hundreds of folk tales about her exist throughout the four-state Ozark region of Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kansas. The novel writers found her personality and her reputed association with known bandits to be a good source of material, and thousands of Western books, most of them entirely fictitious, featured Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. Over 90 years after she was shot in the back by an unknown assailant, we still find books, movies, and television specials capitalizing on the notorious lady. Born Myra Belle Shirley in Carthage, Missouri in 1848, Belle moved to Texas with her family as the Civil War engulfed the Ozarks. Later years found her using Fort Smith, Arkansas as her headquarters, and still later she moved to Younger's Bend near Eufaula, Oklahoma, which was to be her final home. Her daughter Pearl, by Cole Younger, was born while Belle was living in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. Each of these places boasts many Belle Starr stories and hundreds of tales of her exploits are told throughout the Ozarks. A somewhat amusing illustration of Belle's cunning is provided by a story that has been told around Siloam Springs for many years. John Hargrove, a pioneer businessman and one of the founders of this community on the Arkansas Indian Territory border, raised the finest thoroughbred horses in the region. His black stallion had never been beaten in a race, and Hargrove's financial holdings increased greatly as the stallion outran all challengers year after year. Belle Starr, also a lover of fine horses, acquired a spirited sorrel from a Kansas breeder. Returning with her new horse to her younger spent home, she stopped in Siloam Springs and challenged Hargrove to a race. Belle and Hargrove agreed to bet $500 on the contest. Word of Belle Starr's challenging Hargrove's unbeaten stallion spread throughout the region, and large crowds gathered to see the race and to wager among themselves. Belle hired a young Indian boy as a jockey, and, knowing her animal could easily beat Hargrove's stallion, she instructed her jockey to hold the sorrel back and let Hargrove's horse win by at least one length. Belle paid Hargrove the $500 and reluctantly admitted that he had the better horse. The next day, she approached Hargrove again and told him she would like a rematch, but that she wanted the stakes to be raised to $5,000. Convinced the stallion had won easily over Belle's challenger, Hargrove accepted the offer wholeheartedly, and the race was scheduled for 2 days later. As race time approached, the crowds grew even larger than before. People came from miles around to see the contest between the notorious Belle Starr and Siloam's leading citizen. This time, Belle told her jockey to let the horse run with all he had. As she expected, her horse outran Hargrove's stallion by several lengths. Belle left $5,000 richer with a sorrel that was now worth a great deal as a result of its being the only horse ever to beat Hargrove's champion stallion. Hargrove was embarrassed by the trick Belle had played on him, and poor by $4,500. The fact that stories about Belle Starr are a significant part of Ozark folklore and are still being told lends significance to the inscription that appears on her tombstone. It reads as follows: "Shed not for her the bitter tear, nor give the heart to vain regret. Despite the casket that lies here, the gem that filled it sparkles yet. amazing how such few words can hit so deep in the heart, don't you think? Just by a simple poem, and yet it evokes such deep emotion within the reader that makes you feel a strange connection to a person you've never met who passed away before you were even conceived. Someday, I would love to have a poem like that on my tombstone. But that is a long ways away and a long time to read you many a good story of bandits and outlaws and rebels. How would you like to hear about the Ozarks' Last Horseback Outlaw? The turbulent era following the Civil War was the breeding ground for many an Ozark outlaw. Almost every Ozark community was the setting for outlaw activity. Glamorized by dime novel writers, bands like the James Gang, the Daltons, and the Doolin Gang, all headquartered in the Ozarks, achieved national notoriety. One by one, these outlaw bands encountered the law and were destroyed. Judge Parker's Fort Smith court hung some 79 men, while hundreds of others were killed or imprisoned. One such fugitive somehow survived the horseback outlaw era and ended his career of crime in a Harrison, Arkansas bank robbery in 1921. Recognized in history as the last of the horseback outlaws, Henry Starr is the subject of many typical Ozark outlaw folktales that retain an important place in our folk heritage. Starr was born in 1873. He was a half-breed Cherokee and the son of Hop Starr, a brother to Sam Starr. Sam was the common-law husband of Belle Starr. As most outlaw careers were coming to an end, Starr's was just beginning. He participated in many robberies throughout the region at an early age and was caught and imprisoned many times. He was gifted with an engaging personality that always created public sentiment toward leniency. He was generally paroled or given a light sentence. On June 5th, 1893, the Starr Gang, consisting of Starr, Frank Chaney, Bud Tyler, Kid Wilson, Link Complin, Hank Watt, and a man known as Happy Jack, rode into Bentonville, Arkansas, and withdrew some $11,000 at gunpoint from the People's Bank. although a posse pursued them for several days. They were never apprehended. Finally captured, along with Kid Wilson in Colorado Springs, Colorado, Starr was taken to Judge Parker's court in Fort Smith. There he was tried for an earlier shooting and sentenced to hang by the crusading Parker, who was determined to destroy the outlaw element in the region. Through appeal, Starr's sentence was delayed beyond Parker's death, and finally, his sentence was reduced to 15 years in the Ohio State Prison. Once more, his exemplary behavior and likable personality led to an early parole. Over the years, Arkansas authorities continued their efforts to have Starr extradited to stand trial for the Bentonville bank robbery. Indian Territory became the state of Oklahoma in 1907, however, and the first governor of the new state refused to honor these requests. Starr was never tried for the Bentonville robbery. A bank robbery at Amity, Colorado, resulted in his imprisonment until 1913. Then, in 1915, Starr pulled a daring double bank robbery in Stroud, Oklahoma. Captured again, he spent 3 years at the McAllister, Oklahoma State Prison. His fame as one of the last outlaws of the horseback era and his handsome appearance resulted in a brief involvement in the motion picture industry. Soon, however, he found himself once more in a critical financial position, and he turned to the only profession he had ever known. Perhaps as a gesture of defiance toward the Arkansas authorities who had sought his arrest for 30 years, Starr pulled his final bank job at the People's National Bank of Harrison, Arkansas. At 10 o'clock on the morning of February 18th, 1921, Starr and his 3 accomplices, David Lockhart, Rufus Collins, and Oscar Brackett, entered the Harrison Bank. Holding 4 employees and several bank customers at gunpoint, they quickly filled pillowcases with cash at the teller's windows. W.J. Myers, a former president of the bank, happened to be inside transacting business when the robbers entered. Remembering the .38 caliber Winchester rifle he had carefully concealed in the vault some 12 years previously, Myers moved toward the vault, anticipating the robber's next move. Soon, Starr forced cashier Cleve Kaufman to open the vault. Just as it was opened, Starr's attention was momentarily diverted by one of the hostages. Myers quickly grabbed the rifle and seriously wounded the robber. Screaming that he was done for, Starr encouraged his accomplices to run. Myers followed the remaining robbers to the street and fired several shots as their car sped out of town. One shot hit a tire. This hit and the snowstorm that came in suddenly forced the robbers to abandon the car 2 miles out of town. No doubt their thoughts turned to the horses they once used and their greater dependability under similar circumstances. Starr was moved to a Harrison jail cell where he received medical attention. He refused to name his accomplices, but eventually all were caught and given substantial prison terms. Starr died 4 days later on February 22nd, 1921. R.D. Klein operated a furniture store and funeral parlor on the Harrison Square. Starr's body was embalmed and then put on display in Klein's store window for all the citizens of Harrison to view. The 20s and 30s were to bring to the Ozarks such noted bandits as Pretty Boy Floyd, Ma Barker, and Bonnie and Clyde. But Henry Starr's death in Harrison ended the era of the horseback outlaw. Such a interesting, detailed story. Not for what it tells us, but a lot of it is for what it implies. Like the custom of displaying dead bodies in shop windows. Even though it was more or less fitting for a funeral parlor, in this day and age, it would still be considered pretty macabre. These stories truly have a way of captivating the imagination, thinking what kinds of things used to be possible in times gone by. I take it you're eager to hear about another such outlaw by the name of Floyd Edings. The legend of Floyd Edings. Recognized by the state of Arkansas for its, well, history. The small North Arkansas community of Old Carrollton, founded in 1833, was designated as a state park several years ago. Carrollton's residents are justifiably proud of living in one of the Ozarks' oldest cities. Selected as the county seat when Carroll County, Arkansas was formed, Carrollton became an early trade and political center along the old Forsyth Springfield Road through the Ozarks. The first courthouse was established in 1836, and lawyers, judges, and court officials traveled frequently to Carrollton from other Ozark communities to administer law to the hills. A wagon train that met its fate in the infamous Mountain Meadows Massacre in Utah in 1857 consisted mostly of families from the Carrollton region. The 17 children who survived the slaughter were all returned to relatives in Carrollton. Carrollton's location and importance resulted in its transformation into a large military training center for the South during the Civil War. The city was entirely destroyed during the war, but was rebuilt and grew to a population of about 2,000 by 1875. As Boone County was formed, political pressure caused the removal of the Carroll County seat to Berryville. This move, combined with the railroads bypassing Carrollton, precipitated a steady decline in population. Today, Carrollton has only a few hundred residents. Like most of the older Ozark communities, Old Carrollton not only boasts an exciting past, but is also home of one of the region's unique folktales. The sad story of the young robber Floyd Edings burning to death in the Carrollton jail, and of the testament he left, is truly a classic among Ozark tales. During the city's era as a political center, a jail said to be the strongest escape-proof facility in the Ozarks was built in Old Carrollton. 20-foot by 20-foot jail had walls 3 logs thick, with the inner and outer walls laid horizontally. At the center wall, vertically, the jail had only one opening. a heavily barred steel door. Although the courthouse was moved to nearby Berryville in 1875, prisoners were often held in the Carrollton jail for security reasons. The legend of Floyd Edings tells that the young man was being held in the Carrollton jail for robbery around 1888. Apparently, he was disowned by his family for his criminal act. Edings was alone in the jail when it caught fire and, unnoticed by the jailer, burned to death. As his charred remains were being dragged from the rubble, a poem the boy had written about his predicament was discovered. Little is known about how the poem escaped the fire. Some say it was written on the jail floor, while others describe its being found written on a crumpled piece of paper, clutched in his fist. It read, "My name is Floyd Edings, the son of Old Dog. He truly disowned me, but I am one of his flock. How is my passion go naked without one scent? And to old Carrollton the robin I went. I went to Green Forest and hurried to work. They come and handcuffed me and took me to court. They summoned a jury that would cost them 1 cent. And a little courting to old Berryville I went. Brought me my supper and locked the door fast. And left me there lonely to think of the past. Except for my father, I thought it all well. He never come near me, and I wished him ill. No father, no mother, no money to spend. They left me here lonely, myself to defend. The jailhouse caught fire, and I called for help. They never come near me, just lay there and slept. The plagued old jailer went after the key. He did not find him till the jail fire burned me. I wrapped in my blanket and threw myself down. They never come near me till the jail burned down. This poem is nothing if not emotionally charged. Feelings of bitterness and betrayal and rage at this perceived injustice. Whether or not you believe that the young man deserved his fate for the crimes he had committed. Reading this heartfelt told from the perspective of a young man about to meet his maker. It's almost like a conspiracy. Abandoned by his family for doing what he thought was necessary. Forsaken by everyone. It's heartbreaking, really. Let's hope the next story has a less disturbing ending. Death Hoax of the James brothers. Almost every cave in the Ozarks was a legendary hideout for the notorious Jesse and Frank James. And stories of the James gang's buried loot and Robin Hood robbing from the rich and giving to the poor are as numerous as the Ozark Hills. But one James tale differs greatly from the stories of buried loot and the hideout claims. The simple manner in which Jesse James met his fate created widespread suspicion. It seemed most unfitting that America's greatest folk hero should have been shot in the back by his trusted friend Bob Ford. And loyal fans of the James gang's exploits were slow to accept the story. As a result, hundreds of tales were told of Jesse James being seen alive at various locations after his death in 1882. At least 26 men claimed to be Jesse James after his death, and legends grew about how Jesse and Frank James had played a great hoax on history. In 1926, Ed Vaughn and his sister, Sarah Vaughn Snow of Jasper, Arkansas, came forward with an amazing story. Their father, Joe Vaughn, had called his family together as he was dying, they said, and told them that his real name was Frank James. He explained that he had been living under the alias of Joe Vaughn since coming to Arkansas in 1885, and added that his brother Jesse James was not killed in 1882 and was in fact still alive. Vaughn directed his family to an old manuscript he had written and requested they make the true story of the James brothers known after his death. The Vaughn manuscript stated that after Jesse's supposed death in 1882, Frank James gave himself up to Governor Crittenden of Missouri and revealed his plans. Sam Collins, a neighbor to the James farm, had secretly been courting Frank's wife, Annie Ralston, during Frank's many years on the outlaw trail. Frank had made a deal with Collins, whereby Collins would become Frank James and would receive $25,000 from Frank, as well as title to the James farm and to Annie. After being pardoned for all past crimes, the real Frank left Missouri and went to Arkansas under the alias of Joe Vaughn. There, he built a cabin in a remote region along the Buffalo River, married a neighbor's daughter, and raised 9 children as Vaughns. Ed Vaughn, still living in 1983, holds firmly to the belief that he is the son of Frank James, and that the story his father told on his deathbed was true. Ed further remembers Jesse James visiting his father in Arkansas as late as 1920. He did not know that man was Jesse until 1948. And that year, 100-year-old J. Frank Dalton came forward in Lawton, Oklahoma, with a story that he was the real and only Jesse Woodson James, outlaw. He explained to the press that a great hoax had been played on history, and that the James gang had an agreement among them that no one could reveal the truth until he reached 100 years of age. Dalton's story stated that an outlaw named Charles Bigelow had been robbing banks in the early 1880s, using the alias of Jesse James to elude the law. Members of the James gang found Bigelow and killed him. Bigelow's body was brought to Jesse's home in St. Joseph, Missouri, and laid out on the floor. Bob Ford, who had been promised a large reward, then fired his pistol into the wall and ran out to tell the world that he had killed Jesse James. Bigelow resembled Jesse in appearance and was identified by the banks he had robbed as Jesse James. Jesse's wife, mother, friends, and even Governor Crittenden were all in on the plot. Bigelow was therefore buried as Jesse. The real Jesse James left for South America and later Texas, where he lived a peaceful life as J. Frank Dalton. At the time of Dalton's revelation, Rudy Torelli was managing Merrimack Caverns, an Ozark tourist attraction, and known James hideout. To really learn of Dalton's tale, and soon brought the old man back to Missouri. While at Merrimack Caverns, Dalton was questioned intensively, and his physical characteristics were studied and compared with Jesse James' records. Wounds and scars Jesse was known to have had were also found on Dalton. Several men, well over 100, were found who had once known Jesse James. These men were brought to Missouri, where each identified Dalton as the man he had known as the leader of the James gang. Many people felt that Turley was only using Dalton as a publicity stunt to attract more tourists to Merrimack Caverns. Nevertheless, Dalton's story created national interest and reopened the old controversy among James historians. Several new books were written on the subject. Apple and his sister Sarah recognized newspaper photos of Dalton as the man who had frequently visited their father when they were young. Sarah met with Dalton in Los Angeles in 1950 while he was on a national tour. There, Dalton confirmed that Joe Vaughn was his brother Frank James, and that he was Eb and Sarah's Uncle Jesse. Dalton died in 1951 at the age of 102 in Granbury, Texas. His monument reads, Jesse W. James, alias J. Frank Dalton. An 1882 monument in Kearney, Missouri also reads, Jesse Woodson James. A 1926 grave marker in the Wayton, Arkansas cemetery reads, Frank James, alias Joe Vaughn. And a 1915 monument in Independence, Missouri also reads, Franklin Alexander James. Noted writers and respected James historians generally agree that a great deal of folklore surrounds all James history. Over the years, so many writers of dime novels created romantic legends about the James boys that it is often impossible to separate fact from fiction. The stories Joe Vaughn and J. Frank Dalton told were full of holes, and most James scholars consider them merely interesting additions to James folklore. Still, the Vaughn and Dalton stories continue to be told and argued about throughout the Ozarks. What a wild time these two men have lived in, where you could just up and disappear move to a new city, assume a new identity. Anybody's identity, and nobody's in particular. Simply leave everything behind and fool people so easily in this day and age. This would be almost unheard of, with the way records are kept and everything is documented in great detail. If you had a choice, would you trade in your life and become a new person? If I could go back in time, I would ask the two brothers only one question. Why? What kind of stories do you think they will tell me? Of what made them leave their lives behind and conceal their true identities from the world for so many years? And more importantly, what on earth made Governor Crittenden just go along with the scheme? I can see friends and family playing along for the fun of it, but you'd think a government official wouldn't be so easy to convince. Looks like the candle went out. That means it's time for bed. Close your eyes now. Tomorrow is a new day, and until then, dream up something beautiful.